Welcome to the New Wealth Wave podcast, hosted by Dr. Joaquin Wallace. We're diving deep into the intricate layers of the 7-stage generational wealth model to offer invaluable insights on legacy building, wealth accumulation and preservation, and financial growth across generations. I'm Dr. Joaquin Wallace, and this is the New Wealth Wave podcast. Hey, future wealth builders, Dr. Joaquin Wallace, host of the New Wealth Wave podcast. I want to thank you for subscribing to our channel. It's continuing to grow. We're almost at 1,000. Can you believe that? We've had some great guests. And most importantly, I want to thank you for continuing to watch our content and share our content. And also, I want to thank each of you who have purchased my book, Generational Wealth Begins with Generational Knowledge. It is an Amazon bestseller. It was released on the 27th of June, and it's continuing to grow. Thank you for doing that. Now, before we get to the start of the fourth quarter, let's take a look at some of the highlights in quarter three. And to help lead the discussion with Brian Thomas, a speaker and a mentor who helps students develop financial literacy and accountability as they prepare for their independent financial lives. So, Brian, welcome to the studio.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
A year ago, you came onto the podcast and I asked you about the 7-stage generational wealth model. So fast forward to today. What is your thoughts today on the 7-stage generational wealth model?
Actually, I've been using the model in some of my learnings and teachings with some of my mentees and some of the people that I coach. I found the model very comprehensive a year ago. It still relates very much to the discussions I'm having with individuals. But the most important thing is that it relates to both your personal and your financial growth. By looking at your past, present, and future, we grow as individuals and hopefully our finances grow as well.
How does mindset shift influence where someone lands on the intention spectrum?
My 4 magic M's mindset is at the top, right? So everybody begins as a passenger on the spectrum. Without a mindset shift, you eventually become a navigator or a driver simply by doing what you're told to do. But a major mindset shift is required to become a traveler or a guide, to go beyond just making a living, getting by, to really be independent financially and personally. You have to be intentional about your long-term plans, your long-term goals for your life. And without mindset, without even believing that it can be possible for you, when we're born as children, we're totally dependent on our parents or our caregivers to take care of us. High school students are another example of passengers. Adults who may be on government assistance or depending on the government to provide for them in some way or another. Another example might be unemployed adult who's relying on their parents. Maybe they come back to live with their parents because somehow they just haven't figured out how to get a good job and take care of themselves. So it's really anyone who allows someone else or requires someone else to take care of them. And that person essentially is controlling the direction and quality of their life. It's somewhat you would consider it maybe your host. If they have a great life, then even as a passenger, if your parents are wealthy, you could still have a great life, but you're still somewhat of a host. We're all born as passengers. We didn't know how to walk. We didn't know how to talk. These were all challenges that we overcome. And they were all things that we were fearful of. Falling down, riding a bike. So you need to learn to build that confidence and to face fear kind of head on at all stages of your life, really.
So how do you move someone from avoidance to action?
I like to help by having them create a map of where they want to be, where they want to go. Only when you have a map can you really initiate movement. And again, going back to the fact that success requires you to get out of the comfort zone, because even back when we were children, we had to fail in order to grow. And so the key thing is, even as we get older, we have to continue to remember that concept. We have to realize that movement means we're doing things that are uncomfortable because we're not familiar with it. Learning about financial literacy. These are things you don't know about initially, and you're uncomfortable. People don't trust the stock market. People are uncomfortable risking their money. You have to build this mindset around being uncomfortable with the things that you're learning in order to grow. And that's where intention comes in. You have to be conscious of it and intentionally face it head on, regardless of your fear.
And who will be leading the discussion will be Rahkim Sabree, a friend of the program who is AFC certified and also a Forbes contributor. And this is his second appearance in the studio. Rahkim, my man, welcome back to the studio.
Thank you for having me.
Rahkim's first appearance was in our first season, episode 11. And since then, we've been keeping up with him from afar, watching him grow as well. And today, he's going to give us a sneak preview of his upcoming book, scheduled for release in November 2025, titled Overcoming Financial Trauma.
If we can define or redefine culture in alignment with our values and our goals, we can then surround ourselves with people that are going to reinforce the positive behaviors or the desirable behaviors associated with money in line with those values and those goals. From a physiological perspective, what I've come to realize is that capitalism, which is the dominant economic system that we partake in, willingly or unwillingly, prioritizes individualism. So individualism leads to increased consumption, right? Because I need to have my own and you need to have your own and we can't share. So when we look at how that clashes with some of the wider practices across the world, they're more collectivist, right? We're working together for this common cause. It is in direct opposition of this idea of individualism that is upheld by these ideas around capitalism.
What role does community, especially in marginalized populations, play in both perpetuating and healing financial trauma?
Love this question. In fact, as I heard you ask this question, I got a chill down my spine because I feel very passionate about this in the work that I'm doing and also what it is that I've researched and uncovered. If we move into more communal-based approaches to not only building wealth, but healing, now your problem is our problem. Financial trauma is not an individual problem, it is a social problem. What are the ways in which we can work to regulate collectively instead of as individuals? The most overlooked symptoms of financial trauma, or sources of financial trauma, if we can call it that, are the vicarious or observational forms of financial trauma, right? So these are secondary experiences, right? They're not experiences that the individual is having directly. If we can, just kind of draw a contrast, when financial trauma is traditionally discussed or previously discussed, it's usually like you experience this issue, right? Whether it's, the eviction or poverty or repossession or job loss. More often, we don't see the vicarious examples of trauma where we're observing somebody's financial hardship, right? So if we are children and we see our parents struggling, what kind of impact that has on us and our navigation of money. And to just go into a little bit more of the science, there is a theory around the way that our bodies respond to threats that speak to co-regulation, known as polyvagal theory, right? So, it's often referenced to the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve being a collection of bodily systems that start with the brainstem and go down into our throat, our lungs, our stomach, where we feel safe or where we feel in danger, where we feel threatened, but also in recognizing in other human beings through their body language and facial expressions, whether or not safety exists with them. I think another overlooked source of financial trauma is workplace and employment trauma, right? So when we look at what are the behaviors that we have to engage in order to secure a paycheck, what are the things that we have to ignore? What are the things that we have to endure? A lot of times those can be financially traumatic because we're engaged in economic warfare in order for us to survive. I just recently have made a piece of content for social media where I'm saying I'm noticing the pipeline of employee to entrepreneur marked by financial trauma, right? People are fleeing their places of employment and going into entrepreneurship ill-prepared more often than not, because they're trying to get away from this pervasive source of trauma that is often ignored.
Guiding us through this powerful conversation is Dr. Prince Sarpong, making his first appearance on the show, and I can promise you it will not be his last. Dr. Sarpong, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Dr. Wallace, and I'm very happy that you invited me to your podcast.
Dr. Sarpong is an associate professor of finance, a certified financial planner, and a global voice in behavioral finance. He's the founder of the Center of Financial Psychology and Systems and currently serves on the advisory board as well. His work bridges fintech, financial therapy, and cognitive wealth building across generations.
Tend to take it for granted that, okay, here's the book on financial literacy. This is what you need to know about investing. This is a budgeting app. Why don't you download the next budgeting app? This will not work because the narratives that push people to behave the way they do, in most cases, more powerful than even the knowledge that they acquire, because the narratives usually sticks with you for so long. And sometimes it's actually not just that individual, it's generational. So they might be carrying it like some kind of obligation without even knowing consciously that they are carrying such narratives as an obligation. And because of that, no, financial literacy alone will not be enough in helping people achieve generational wealth. If we focus solely on financial literacy, we may actually end up doing more harm than good when people start believing something might be wrong with them because they know everything that needs to be known but are not doing what needs to be done. And that is not because there's something wrong with people. You know that you need to save, but you're not saving. You know you're not supposed to spend excessively, but you still do. When we push financial literacy without acknowledging the narratives, the hidden traumas, the stories that people have inherited or been told, which haven't been corrected, haven't been resolved, then no amount of literacy can help a person move to the next step or heal. And luckily, with the shift into behavioral finance, and now we've been moving into financial therapy, we are beginning to see that there's a lot that influences us beyond the numbers. And the thing now is that it is actually these narratives that shape our behaviors. So whatever we see in these numbers or don't see are actually influenced by these narratives that drive us. And if we really then want to drive behavioral change, if we want clients to stick with certain investment guidance, then we need to go beyond the numbers to then look at what are the narratives behind the behaviors that drives the numbers. On one hand, you hear lots of stories about, well, we were not raised to ABC, or our parents never taught us XYZ. Those were the normal narratives you usually hear. And of course, even with the systemic issues, especially in marginalized communities, it's also from the perspective of we were treated ABC, or, whatever the case may be. But what is usually missing in the conversation, which you capture so succinctly in your book, is actually also the other element of that genetic code, which is basically imposed on you and you never even know it. True financial wealth or financial freedom begins with owning your narrative. It also needs to extend into being gracious to yourself or being graceful to yourself, so that you don't beat yourself up too much when you don't get it right the first time or the second time. Allow yourself some grace. Some narratives are hundreds of years old. So if you haven't been able to get it right in 2 years, in 3 years, allow yourself some space. And that could lead to you beginning to own your narrative. It allows you to subconsciously even rewrite the narratives by being graceful to your own self.
I hope you guys enjoyed looking back at those highlights in Q3. Now, as we always say, generational wealth begins with generational knowledge, and I'm hopeful that you will continue to share the podcast with family and friends, and most importantly, continue to purchase the book. I enjoy reading your comments on Amazon, and I love seeing your comments on LinkedIn as well. So until next time, as we always say, again, generational wealth begins with generational knowledge, and I'll see you at the start of Q4 for the final stretch in 2025. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the New Wealth Wave podcast, hosted by Dr. Rahkim Wallace. Our show is edited and produced by Ray Haycraft. To dive deeper into the world of financial wisdom and learn how to create your financial footprints, head to our website at www.drjwallace.com. For more updates and exclusive content, connect with us on social media by searching Dr. Rahkim Wallace. And if you have questions and comments, feel free to email us at thenewwealthwavepodcast@gmail.com. Remember, generational wealth begins with generational knowledge. And as always, thanks for listening. The content presented in this podcast is strictly for educational purposes and should not be taken as investment advice. The views and opinions expressed by our guests may not necessarily reflect those of the New Wealth Wave podcast and its host or producers. Listeners are urged to exercise discretion and judgment before making any financial or investment decisions. Always consult with a financial professional or advisor before taking any action based on the content of this podcast. If you're enjoying the New Wealth Wave podcast, we appreciate if you leave us a review. We're always open to topic suggestions and guest recommendations. Feel free to reach out to us directly with your thoughts and feedback. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the New Wealth Wave podcast.